Well, hello. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, good day. How is everybody? Doing okay? Everybody doing okay? Well, we are back at it for day 3 for this Alexander Jackson trial. And yes, I am behind because, well, life. And if you are new here, well, that's just how it goes around here. Sometimes I am really good about putting out content every day, and then I just fall off the face of the earth for a few days. But either way, like and subscribe and hit that notification, and you will know when I put out any videos. And that way you won't miss any when I do put them out. And you will know exactly when I put them out. So we are on day 3, part 2. The first part was just as boring as you could everly imagine. It is Alexander Jackson. He is on trial for the deletion of his mom, dad, and younger sister. He is being charged with 3 counts of first-degree murder for that. And he so that's where we are. We are still in the state's case in chief. They are still putting on their case. We've listened to medical examiners. We've listened to neighbors. We have listened to officers that responded to the scene. And right now we are listening to what's his face, the investigator for the crime scene, looking at some crime scene photos, the weapon report. It's investigator Bosenberg. It's been investigator Bosenberg since the end of day 2 and still into day 3, and he takes up most of day 3 until we get to an officer and his body cam at the end of the day. But we have to sit through officer investigator Bosenberg first. Go through all of the evidence gathering and photos and that and this and what not. And if you hear some wrestling in the background, as you saw just then at the door, there is a pup in the room, and I am on pup duty now because she cannot be left alone in the house because she chews on everything. So that's where we are. And she messes with everything. So she knocks things over and she does it. I gotta itchy. And then the cat is probably sitting outside the door. So that's why she's whining. Okay. So that is where we are in this. I think we can just go ahead and get right in there. And I just want to remind everybody to like and subscribe to the channel and to help get the content out there to the world. Get the algorithm up popping, and help get me started. Just help stuff get generated a little bit more. Yeah. And just also another reminder, I am not in any way a lawyer. I don't have any legal expertise in any of this. I do not specialize in any form of legal work. I'm just here to give my commentary and um, my critical judgment and my bias opinions on certain things. Fantastic. That's the boy. So who also has no patience. And again, when you hit the record, they don't bother you until you hit the record. So let's go ahead and get the video started. And let me see what the teenager wants. We're going to get right back into the Bosenberg and see what he's got going on. Oh, shit. Wrong one, wrong one, wrong one.
All right, go ahead and have a seat.
Hi.
Okay, we are back on the record after our mid-morning break. Mr. Bosenberg is back in stand, and sir, again, I would just remind you that you are still under oath. And with that, Ms. Slaughter, you may resume your direct examination.
Thank you, Judge. Investigator Bosenberg, in general, when you find a gun or firearm at a crime scene, do you do anything with that weapon at the crime scene in general?
Typically, we would photograph the weapon, and then we would put it in some packaging material to transport it back to the station after that.
In this case, was there anything additional done aside from packaging with the weapon at the crime scene?
Yeah, in this case, I added an additional step to that process. I actually, after we took photographs and had the evidence markers down by it, I took a couple DNA swabs from it before we handled the firearm at all.
Can you tell us why that was done? Firstly, why it was done at the scene?
True, yeah, it's not all the time that we actually have a firearm located such close proximity to victims or in relation to the scene directly. So this time I wanted to capture some DNA from the firearm in an undisturbed state. There can always be a potential for disturbance just by mere collection of an item. So I wanted to make sure that I had a DNA sample or potential sample from the very beginning without any disturbance to it.
When you attempt a DNA collection, can you tell us what you do?
Yes, so we use special sterile swabs and sterile water. So what the typical process is we'll put sterile water on a sterile swab, and then we'll swab an area to collect the DNA, and then that swab goes back into the container. They don't come in a big box of them. They come in a box, but each sleeve contains 2 DNA swabs. So they're sterile and separate from each. So they go back into that sleeve that we pulled it from, and then that goes into its own separate envelope.
What areas of the firearm did you swab?
Yeah, so on scene, I swabbed the trigger. I swabbed the grip behind the trigger, the textured area of the grip, and then what I would call like the foregrip, where your forward hand would go in front of the trigger. I swabbed that, and then I swabbed one more area, but I would have to look at my notes again to see where that fourth one was from.
If you had an opportunity to review your notes, would you be able to recall where that fourth area was?
Yes.
Do you have your notes up there?
I do.
if you would take a chance to review those and let me know once you've had that opportunity.
Sure. All right, yeah, the fourth one would have been, I wrote it down as the loading area on my evidence log, but at the time I misassumed where the actual loading area was.
Damn.
So the fourth one was taken from like just forward of that trigger. The breech block is what it's officially called.
Can you tell us what it was about those 4 specific areas that you wanted to swab those at the scene?
Yes, so given the circumstances of the case, that the fire more than likely been used right then and there, I swabbed the areas that I would have been a high probability that somebody would have touched in the commission of doing something with that firearm.
May I have the screen, Your Honor?
Should be up.
Investigator Bosenberg, looking at State's Exhibit 122, can you tell us what we're seeing in this photograph?
122, and it's
Yes, this is an
22
overall
gauge.
full length to the right side of the rifle.
And where is this photograph taken?
This was taken in our crime scene lab.
State's Exhibit 123, can you tell us what we're looking at in this photograph?
Yes, this is the right side of the stock of the rifle.
And 124?
The midsection on the right side.
In State's Exhibit 124, is it visible any of the places that you just described as being one of those first 4 places that you swabbed?
Yes,
Can you use the laser pointer to show us
yes.
and describe the areas?
So the first area, the trigger, be right here. Another area I collected from this texture portion of the grip, and then we can't quite fully see. Well, I guess one of the other areas was what I called the loading area initially in my report in this little section right here.
And you said you were missing one. Is that secondary or that last place that you were missing visible in State's Exhibit 122?
Yes, so I took another one from the forend grip, which I describe as this place here. The textured area is where I swabbed for DNA.
What are we seeing in State's Exhibit 125?
So after we transported the firearm back to our lab, I took additional DNA swabs back in our lab also.
And the areas marked with these green stickers as E and F with the arrows, are those the areas that you would have specifically swabbed?
Yes.
Is 126 those same stickers but from a different vantage point?
Yes.
Same with 127?
Yes.
And what are we seeing in 128?
This is just another angle of the trigger in that breech block area of this rifle.
And when you refer to the breech block, is that this metallic or silverish area that I'm circling?
Correct.
And 129, what are we seeing in this photograph?
So this is a photo of the inside chamber area of the rifle, showing a round that is in the rifle.
Once you swabbed at the scene the rifle for DNA, what did you do with it next?
After we swabbed the rifle at the scene, it was then collected and put in some packaging material for transport back to the lab.
Just to be clear, when you are handling and or collecting or processing, are you wearing gloves?
Yes.
Once the DNA was collected on those swabs, what do you do with those swabs?
Hold on.
They're deposited in our evidence division for safekeeping until a decision's made in the future whether or not we send those to the state lab.
And some of the swabs that you took from the firearm, were those sent to the state lab?
Yes.
And upon being sent to the state lab, were they analyzed?
They were by the state lab, yes.
What, if any, results were returned regarding these DNA swabs that you took from the firearm?
Yes, their results came back and said that either didn't find any DNA on the swabs or that the results were inconclusive.
Did you receive a report back from DCI that memorialized their findings.
Yes.
And will you flip to Exhibit 152, 2-page document?
Okay.
Is that the report that you received back from DCI?
Yes, it is.
Your Honor, the state would move to admit Exhibit 152.
Any objection? All right, then at this time, states Exhibit 152 is admitted without objection.
Investigator Bosenberg, can you tell us, once you get back to the lab with the firearm, what do you do with it?
So once I got back to the lab, additional photographs were taken of the firearm. I took additional DNA samples from the firearm, and then I processed it for latent prints.
Can you walk us through the process for searching for or attempting to find latent prints?
Sure. So there's two main methods that we use. One of them is to use fingerprint powder or dust, and we'll actually dust for latent prints. A lot of times we reserve that for large items or work on the scene somewhere. We also have what we call, or I call it, a super glue fuming chamber. So it's a large box, a chamber that we put items into. So this item fit inside that chamber. So a lot of times we'll put items in there, and what we do is you add a little super glue to like a heating pad, and when super glue gets warmed up, it becomes a vapor. That vapor circulates around the chamber and sticks to latent prints. Latent prints are left from like oils or residue on your fingers or palms or anything that would have rigid detail. And so as that vapor circulates around the chamber, it adheres to those oils or whatever other debris from your like latent prints. Because with the naked eye, you can't really see that oil residue that's left from a latent print. So that process adheres to that, and then after that, we will put it under what we call the full spectrum imaging system. It's like an alternate light source device that is connected to a camera. It's connected to a computer that lets us view the item that we just removed from the chamber. With that alternate light source, we can see fingerprints. So fingerprints are usually viewed like in the UV light spectrum. So we use a special light and then a special filter that the lens can interpret, and then we see an image on the screen of that latent print.
Does this full spectrum imaging system also photograph prints, or do you just use it for viewing?
No, it does it also. It'll view the fingerprints, and then that's how we document and photograph the latent prints as well.
When you, in general, find a latent print,
What happened? I missed something.
this doesn't make sense, let me know. When you have a latent print that you find on an object,
Well, he's looking at you like it don't make sense.
to a known print.
That is the ultimate goal, yes.
And when I say a known print, can you explain to us what a known print is?
Sure. So if I
Somebody's print that's in the same system.
A print that we know the origin from. So as people's fingerprints are taken in a controlled environment, such as an arrest or a job application, those fingerprints are known prints because we know the source that the fingerprints come from. And then on the reverse end of that, we call it a latent print. If somebody were to touch a cup and set the cup down and walk away, and we found a print, we know it's a print, but we just don't know the origin of it, and so it would be a latent print.
In this specific investigation, did you or were there known prints collected from the defendant?
Yes.
When you performed this super glue fuming process, were latent prints developed on the rifle?
Yes.
During processing of the fingerprinting, were the latent prints collected from the rifle compared to the known print collected from the defendant?
Yes.
And was that done by you?
Myself in conjunction with a state program, computer program that we use.
Will you look in the book again, please, and focus specifically on exhibits 134 through 139? recognize those photos?
I do.
Were those photos taken by you or through the full spectrum imaging system during your latent print analysis?
Yes.
And in exhibits 134 through 139, are those images fairly and accurately depicting different steps that you took during your analysis?
Yes.
Your Honor, at this time, the state would move to have exhibits 134 through 139 admitted.
Any objection, Mr. Johnson? All right, then at this time, exhibits 134 through 139 are admitted. Do you wish to publish?
Yes, Judge.
All right. Should be up.
Investigator Bosenberg, looking first at exhibit 134, can you describe for us what we're seeing in this photograph?
Yes, this is a photograph that I took using that full spectrum imaging system. This is of the left side of the rifle. It's a latent print that I located that I denoted with L1 standing for latent.
And L1 or latent 1, you said came from the left side of the rifle that was recovered.
But you know what? You take a print from their rifle.
In states
What are the odds that his prints will be on it?
Appeared. Otherwise, is this the same image?
Pretty circumstantial to
Can you
me.
tell us what those red circles depict or why they end up on the picture?
Yeah, so I added these two circles. My intent was to be able to, so at this point I'd already matched up this latent print with a known print, and it was matched up to a palm print. And so I was trying to orient in a visual way the approximate position that that hand would have been in to leave a palm print in that fashion.
Exhibit 136. Is this the same photograph of latent 1?
Yes.
And though difficult to see, can you describe for us what these, I'm going to call them things, these blue things are that were added to the photograph?
Yes, so these are just a kind of a representative sample of some of the, what I would refer to maybe as data points that I used in my comparison of this latent print to the known print. We look for special areas on these latent prints, typically what we would call like a ridge ending or a ridge bifurcation. There are different areas of the print that we use, and then we find those same areas on the known print. And so this just kind of shows a subsample of the points that I used in that comparison.
In States Exhibit 37, there are multiple images. Starting first on the right side of this exhibit, can you tell us what this image is?
Yes, that's a known, it's the known left palm print of Alexander Jackson.
And just to clear up the record, I mean 137. And so this known palm print from the defendant, is this the image that was used to compare to the latent print found on the left side of the firearm? The blue markings shown on the known print, did those correlate with the ridge detail that you found on the firearm?
Yes, those points are the same points on the left on the latent print as they are on the known ones. And that's just like a sample of the total amount of points that I used in that comparison.
Investigator Bosenberg, can you tell us what we're looking at in 138?
Yeah, sure. In order to try to give a visual on how this palm print was oriented, sometimes on fingerprints it's really easy to tell the orientation because we have a small area of the finger the print is located. So when a fingerprint's on an item, it's fairly easy to kind of mentally see how that would be aligned. But with the palm print, it's a little different because palms are so big. There's so much area there. So in this photo, what I did is I took the overall photo of the rifle that I took, and then I overlaid the image of the latent print from the FSIS, the full spectrum imaging system, over top of the overall photograph to show approximately how that latent print was oriented on the photo of the actual rifle.
And in 139, can you tell us what additionally was done here?
Yep, so then I again overlaid a third image, which is the image of the left palm print. And that's where those red circles or the circles we saw earlier come into play. I picked two specific data points that were the same on the palm and on the latent print and used those to align the orientation of the palm print on the latent print to give a visual of the position which the palm would have been in to leave a print.
And the red circle that you're referring to is one of them here and the second one here?
Yes.
If you could look at exhibits 140 through 145 in the binder in front of you.
So you have two elephants wrestling outside my door. Well, just two medium-sized dogs.
Do you recognize those photos?
I do.
And were those
Nope,
photos also
never
taken
seen them
by you
before.
during the latent print processing of this firearm?
Yes, they were the photos that I took or processed.
And did they fairly and accurately depict the information that you gathered from the right side of the firearm?
Yes.
Your Honor, at this time, the state would move to have exhibits 140 through 145 admitted.
Any objection? All right, then at this time, states exhibits 140 through 145 are admitted, and you may publish.
Can you tell us, Investigator Bosenberg, what it is that we're seeing in exhibit 140?
Yes, this is the latent print on the right side of the rifle.
And when you say the latent print, was this print also developed doing the super glue fuming?
Yes.
And in 141, what are we seeing here?
This is that same latent print with those two red circles around two specific data points.
And the data points that you're referring to, are those the red circles that are shown in the top right of that photograph?
Yes.
What are we seeing in State's Exhibit 142?
This is similar to that left side, just showing a kind of a subsample of the different data points that I used in the comparison of this latent print to the known print.
And in State's Exhibit 143?
These are those same prints, but on the known print.
So is this a known print of the defendant's right hand?
It is.
And the blue markers would be the same data points that corresponded with the data points in 142?
Correct.
And in 144, what are we looking at here?
These are the previous two images, just in a side-by-side format.
And in State's Exhibit 145, can you tell us what we're viewing in this exhibit?
So this one would have been with the photographs overlaid on top of each other. This one's the right palm print overlaid on top of the latent print on the rifle on the right side. And this one's a little harder to orient, but on the right side is where the fingers would be extending down. So the left side of that palm is like the back end that connects to the wrist.
Can you tell us, Investigator Bosenberg, what an ideal surface looks like for the leaving behind of a...
Yeah, so your ideal surfaces will typically be your shinier surfaces, your non-porous surfaces. Glass is an excellent example. It's flat and it's very smooth. The more porous or the more textured a surface gets, the less it becomes suitable for collecting finger or latent prints, because any type of texture kind of breaks up that oil and the transfer of that latent print to a surface.
Why does he always look confused?
Yeah.
How would you describe the quality of the prints?
Yeah.
Latent 1 and Latent 2?
Those two prints were of very good quality.
And what makes you say that?
There was a
Because I
large
said
area that
so.
they covered, and I know just looking at a standard photo is kind of hard to see some of that detail, but when we're examining these photos, we zoom in to a higher degree to be able to really see some of these points. And these two latent prints had a lot of that. Those data points are what we would call like minutia, all those ridge endings or bifurcations. There's a lot of them visible on there, just a really clear format.
Leighton 1 and Leighton 2, were those the only prints that you found associated or on this rifle?
No.
How many additional prints did you find?
One other print that was documented.
And where was that print located?
That was also located on the right side of the rifle, just a little further back from where Leighton 2 would have been located.
You found that Leighton print 1 matched the left palm of the defendant, correct?
Yes.
And Leighton 2 matched the right palm of the defendant. Is that also correct?
Yes.
What did you find as far as matches for the print named or titled Leighton 3?
I did not find a match for that print.
Can you tell us why?
So it was put into the database. The database didn't return. The database always returns potential matches. It's our job to go in there and actually match it up. When it returns potential matches, it bases it on like an algorithm score. None of the scores were very good, and I went through and
So do you
reviewed all the potential matches and ruled them out as
Dad's
candidates to that Leighton print.
prints in there too?
This print wasn't as good a quality as the other 2 prints. This Leighton print consisted mainly of a lot of just horizontal ridge lines. There were points of minutia, data points in there, but far less than the 2 known ones that we were able to identify.
I want to make sure I understand. So the program that you use, you said, will send you or spit out a potential match, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and then once you receive the potential match, then you yourself manually will review the match that is sent to you?
Yes.
Now,
With the
you
microscope.
testified that the print in Leighton 3 had mostly horizontal ridge lines that ran parallel to each other. Did I say that right?
I guess, yeah, I should clarify. Horizontal is kind of an abstract word to describe it, depending on how you're viewing it, but they were mainly parallel with each other.
Opposed to what? What would have made them better?
So, like, for example, in a fingerprint, there's typically a handful of shapes you're going to find in a fingerprint that are all within a very small section of your finger. So within just like a few millimeters or a half centimeter, you're going to have ridges on your fingers that are turning and curving and coming together. And so there's lots of different points that we would look at within a fingerprint. When all these ridges are horizontal, there's not a lot of different areas where those ridges could come together to make unique marks. When they're horizontal, you're really just left with one ridge just ending as the top parallel line continues. So it's a little harder to find a suitable candidate for that just because there's less data available overall in a print like that.
What does it mean, Investigator Bosenberg, for a fingerprint to be smudged?
Sure. So fingerprints are actually very delicate in nature. They're just the oils from the ridges of very microscopic lines on our hands or palms that are left. So a smudge is if, I would touch the table, but I pressed down too hard or I swiped my hand on the table, it would kind of result in kind of like a smear or a smudge mark on a Leighton print.
Did you find any fingerprints on this rifle that you would describe as smudged or smeared?
Not as like a smearing. There was parts of distortion or
I'm so sorry if you
pockets
can
or
hear
areas
all
around,
the
like,
noise
known
that's
Leighton
going on
prints,
in the background.
but no evident signs of lots of smearing.
What does that mean, heavy pockets?
So it's kind of hard to see on some of these photos, but of the known Leightons,
Let me stop you for a second. Is there any one of those photos where it is visible that would help if I pulled it back up?
There might be, yes. If you go to States Exhibit 134.
Lady is ready in the background. Turn the lights off.
All right,
Is
so
there an area you'd like me to zoom in on?
So kind of when I refer to like a heavy pocket, there's two different areas, like down here at the bottom of this one or even at the top. So we would classify this as kind of just some sort of distortion. It's either, a heavier amount of oil that was deposited there. it's kind of hard to actually determine what causes some of this distortion, but a lot of times you'll see some like heavier pockets like that mixed in with some nice areas. So yeah, there could be a lot of different contributing factors. Something that pressed down really heavily on there, or moved ever so slightly, kind of combining some of that oil together.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness stand?
You may.
Why?
Do you still need 134 up there for a minute?
No. All right.
Thank you.
Investigator Boasberg, will you cut the zip ties on 155 on that rifle, please?
Sure.
Oh, do we get to see the gun? Is he going to put gloves on first? Nope. He's not. Oh, he is. Look at him. Very good.
All right.
If you would come down to the level.
Sure. Good. With the rifle.
Miss Slaughter, I can't hear you.
Thank you, Judge.
Yep.
Investigator, will you first double check and make sure that weapon's cleared and that it's not loaded?
Why does she have to tell him that?
Can you demonstrate to us approximately the position in which those fingerprints or those left and right palm prints were located on that weapon? And approximately what position on your palm were the identifying markers that you noted from the left side?
So then again, same on the left side, we referred to two different points that were kind of on the lower bottom side of the palm. Those were situated just slightly further back on this left side, just a little bit further back from there, kind of in a position now.
Well, that's a strange way to hold a gun.
Thank you. If you would return that to the box.
Can y'all hear that? See, boy, playing a game. My child.
Unless you like the latex, I don't need it anymore.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay. Investigator Bosenberg, when you were processing this rifle, was it loaded?
It was loaded at the beginning of the processing. We unloaded it.
I asked that poorly. When you received the rifle from the scene, were there still bullets in it?
Yes,
And how many were there?
3.
Looking again at what's already been admitted as State's Exhibit 129, may I publish that, Judge?
Okay.
Thank you. Is there a bullet in the chamber of this gun?
Yes.
And the bullet that we're referring to, is that this brass object here?
No,
Yes.
it does not.
Will you look at Exhibit 130? Is the image in 130 a photograph that you took
Yes.
during the processing of this rifle?
Yes.
Fair and accurately depicts.
Yes.
Your Honor, state would move to admit Exhibit 130.
Any objection to 130, Mr. Johnson? All right, State's Exhibit 130 is admitted, and you may publish.
Can you tell us what is in Exhibit 130, Investigator Bosenberg?
Yes, these are three 22 caliber rounds that we ejected from the rifle.
And when you ejected them from the rifle, did you observe them to the extent that you could tell what their caliber was?
Yes.
And what was that?
22 caliber.
And what was the make of these bullets?
Gun.
And were these the same size and make of the ammunition that was found on the fireplace at 4414?
Yes.
Will you also look at 131?
Okay.
And can you tell us, well, was this a photo that you took?
Yes.
Your Honor, can State move to admit 131 as well, Your Honor?
Any objection, Mr. Johnson? All right, then State's Exhibit 131 is admitted. Wish to publish? Or not?
Not yet, Judge. Thank
Okay.
you. Investigator Bosenberg, after you processed the firearm for prints and DNA, did you also test fire this weapon?
Yes, I did.
Can you tell us all the purposes for test firing a gun?
Yes, this case had multiple purposes. One is to collect a sample of a shell casing that we'd call, a known shell casing from that firearm. So that was one purpose of test firing it. The other purpose was to get an accurate depiction of how this firearm ejected its casings after being fired.
And can you describe for us what your findings were in regard to how this specific firearm ejects the shell casings?
Yes, this one's a bottom ejecting firearm. So when the round is fired, the casing actually kicks out from the bottom of that breech block area that we saw in the photo. So if you're in a horizontal position, so if the gun is facing forward, the casing would eject down and straight ahead. It's kind of a forward angle, but not steep enough to be like a 45-degree angle.
How many times did you fire the weapon during your test fire?
4 times.
Can you explain to us what a semi-automatic gun is?
Yes, so semi-automatic is a firearm that once there's a round in the chamber and you pull the trigger, the firearm will automatically eject that shell casing and load another shell casing. You don't have to manually manipulate the firearm each time you shoot it, minus pulling the trigger.
So when you say manually manipulate the firearm, some sort of cocking action doesn't have to be done for each shot,
Correct.
just at the beginning.
Correct, yeah. You'll have some manipulation at the beginning to load that first round from the magazine into the chamber.
And once a bullet is loaded into the chamber, going forward, one trigger pull equals one shot with not having to do anything else.
Correct.
Is the Browning .22 caliber that was collected a semi-automatic weapon?
Yes.
So after the initial bullet manipulation to be loaded into the chamber, every time there's a trigger pull, a bullet will be fired.
Yes.
Can you tell us if during your processing of this firearm, you were able to determine how many bullets it holds in a full load?
Yes, so for that question, we looked at documentation from Browning itself and found that the documentation from Browning, we found this specific rifle holds 11 in the magazine.
Based on the evidence that you collected at the scene, including the number of bullet wounds to Jan, Melissa, and Sabrina Jackson, did you form an opinion as to whether or not during killings that firearm had to be reloaded?
Yes, there would have had to have been a reload at some point in the process.
But was there?
Investigator,
Are they short ammo? Long ammo?
Is there any way for you to fathom a guess on how many firearms you've test fired in your career?
Easily over 100. I think in 2020, I probably alone processed 80 different firearms throughout the 2020 year. My numbers in 2021 were probably roughly around 80 or slightly over.
Have you ever had difficulty figuring out how to load or operate the firearm that you were responsible for test firing?
Very few times. Most firearms are very similar
No,
to each other, so
because
one
I
can
am
kind of take care of
excellent
the process on all different
at my
firearms.
job.
So it would be less than a handful of times that I would have had to refer to other sources to figure out how to manipulate a firearm.
Did
No,
you
I'm
have
too
any
good.
difficulty in this case trying to figure out how to manipulate this firearm?
I did.
Can you describe for us the extent of the difficulty that you had?
This one's kind of unlike a lot of what I might describe as like a typical firearm or handgun format in the loading process. So I did refer to a video to see how to properly load this rifle.
Did you provide a copy of that video to our office?
I did.
And would viewing portions of the video provided help you describe or demonstrate in a safe manner some of the ways that this firearm is operated?
Yes.
Your Honor, at this time I would ask the court's permission to publish portions of what we have previously labeled as Court Exhibit 1.
Mr. Johnson? All right.
Turn your mic on.
Ms. Slaughter, you may go ahead and publish the.
I didn't hear nothing you said because your mic wasn't on, Mr. Johnson.
You may. Let me know when you're ready, Ms. Slaughter, and I'll turn on the system.
Will do, Judge.
Will do. Who you growling at, girl? My doggy growled at me. Am I making too much noise?
I'm ready. Yes. For records purposes, Your Honor, the first segment of this video that I am going to play starts approximately 1 minute, 50 seconds into the video with the intention of stopping approximately 3 minutes, 25 seconds into the video.
Fantastic. Thank you. There's a little baby gun.
Now the safety here is right above the trigger. It's a cross bolt safety, and it's very intuitive. If you want to fire, just push and then fire. To charge the bolt, pull back on the lever here, and this charges the bolt itself. This is also what releases the shell, and then the ejected shell comes out of the bottom. And this keeps the shells from going toward the face or anywhere else, just has them straight down. The walnut stocks have a nice high gloss to them. There is a nice metal butt plate, and here's where the tube goes into the rear. And this, you pull the tube out to load it, and then of course loading is done right here inside the stock. It does have a tubular magazine that feeds the rounds into the chamber.
Well, that's neat. Never seen that before.
The rod itself has a spring that keeps pressure on the shells to keep them moving forward. Goes right back into the buttstock. It weighs 5.2 pounds, so it's.
And then the second clip for records purposes, Your Honor, that I want to play from this starts at approximately 4 minutes, 52 seconds into the video and plays through approximately 5 minutes, 20 seconds.
All right, thank you.
Girl, get to it.
Now, one unique feature about this rifle is that it isn't takedown. And here is a screw that comes loose. Then you take this lever and push forward toward the handguard, pull back on your receiver, and then you just turn, and it releases. Really easy to do, even in the field.
Why do you do that? What was
You
the?
manufacture.
Why did you have to do that?
Investigator Bosenberg, in watching that video, there was a portion where the narrator of the video mentioned charging the bolt. Did you hear that in the video?
Yes.
Can you describe for us what it means or what he meant when he says charge the bolt?
Yeah, so after you would load all the rounds, they would be inside of the stock in that magazine tube. You could pull the trigger, but you haven't transferred one from that magazine into the firing area of the firearm. So you have to pull back that lever, which releases the front bullet from the magazine into the chamber of the rifle.
So when it's loaded, in order to be able to shoot it, that bullet has to be ready.
Yes.
And that's done on that, what'd you call it?
Breech block is how I referred to it earlier. Yes.
They're both confused. He looks confused. He's just got a confused look on his face all the time. This chair is so much more comfortable. I got a new chair today, yo.
Investigator Bosenberg, when you processed the scene, that downstairs living room area, was there anything that you found that you would have considered a disturbance to that scene?
I guess when you say disturbance, what do you mean by?
Anything down there that indicated any signs of a struggle occurring?
I would say no.
It's his opinion.
Did you observe any furniture impressions in the carpeting suggesting that furniture had been bumped or moved?
The furniture appeared to be in a normal position.
Any items strewn about the floor that appeared to you to have been knocked off of a hard surface?
No.
The puzzle piece that, or the puzzle that was being put together on that coffee table in the living room area, did you observe or find any pieces from that on the floor in any way?
No, that all appeared normal.
I previously asked you about whether or not you observed any bloody footprints making their way into Sabrina's room and whether or not there were any bloody footprints that had made their way up the stairs in any fashion. Do you recall that line of questioning?
Yes.
May I have the screen back, Your Honor?
You may.
In State's Exhibit 96, other than the thicker or darker pooling of blood in the bottom right side of this screen, did you observe any blood going past that point towards the back door?
No.
Do you consider, thank you, Judge, do you consider the .22 caliber to be a small caliber weapon?
Yes.
Are there any caliber weapons smaller than a .22 that you're aware of?
I do know there is like a 17 caliber, but I'm not sure how widespread or mainstream it is.
Is a .22 caliber something you consider widestream or mainstream?
Yes.
Yes. What are you doing? Go in here.
Investigator Bosenberg, what blood splatter is?
Sure. So yeah, blood spatter is really any type of blood that kind of does what the meaning says, a spatter mark. So it really refers to any transfer of blood, mainly like through the air. Blood spatter can happen a lot of different ways, but if it traveled through the air and impacted a surface, it can create different markings. That's typically what we refer to as blood spatter. The source or destination can be multiple things. It could be flicked off of your hands if you had bloody hands. It's just once that blood is airborne and then impacts the surface, that's what we would consider blood spatter.
When you processed the residents at 4414, did you find blood splatter?
There was a decent amount in the hallway.
Blood splatter?
Blood trail leading up. There was different areas of blood spatter there. Some was found on the basement wall, kind of by the stairs, near like that light switch area. And I'd say a little bit was found too around Jan Jackson's head area. You had pooling of blood, which wouldn't be considered blood spatter, but then kind of extending outside of that blood pool, there was small portions of blood spatter there too.
May I have permission to republish Exhibit 79, Your Honor?
You may.
Choo.
Investigator Bosenberg, you said that you observed some blood splatter along the wall.
Dexter did not analyze blood splatter. He analyzed blood spatter.
On
Blood
exhibit
spatter
179,
and
excuse me, on Exhibit 79, does
Stop
the
it.
blood splatter become apparent?
Stop it.
Yes.
You stop that
And
right
this
now.
area of dark spots or dark matter just below the light switch, is that the blood splatter that you're referring to?
Yes.
When you said that you saw blood splatter up and down the hallway,
Dear fucking Jesus,
was
Lord,
that
have
blood
mercy.
splatter low or high or both? What location did you find it up and down this hallway here?
So I guess I'm referring to like a lot of the carpet areas, kind of just two generic types of blood in the hallway. You have the splatter marks that, like at the bottom right of this photo, you kind of see like a parabola shaped
Parabola.
view that would be kind of that blood spatter. Some of the footprints would be more of a transfer.
He enunciates the word
Exhibits to
spatter.
76. Does this,
Spatter. To get her to say it
for
right.
how
And
this
she's still not,
the
she's not.
the shape you said, as far as the blood splatter here?
So yeah, that shape I was referring to is further up, but in this one, close to 15, you can see signs of like blood spatter.
Was there additionally blood splatter seen on the floorboards in the
But she's saying the word.
floor level?
Do you think you are right? And he is saying it wrong?
Some splatter evidence that was seen on the
Splatter.
bottom of the bed and bed frame in the bedroom of Alexander Jackson earlier, correct?
Yes.
Can you tell us, investigator, what are some of the factors that affect how blood is splattered?
No.
Yes, there's
Goody.
quite a few different factors that would affect blood spatter, and it all depends kind of on the source. Slower velocity blood spatter is going to show up as like bigger droplets. If you have a higher velocity blood spatter, that would be smaller droplets typically. There's lots of different ways they can come from. You can have blood spatter from gunshots because that's more of a high velocity. Let's say I had a bloody nose and blood was dripping on my hand and I flung my hand. That made it on the wall or the ground, that would be blood spatter. But since my hand is playing slower than like a gunshot, it would be bigger spatter marks and that would be left. And so there's a lot of different ways. Any way really blood could get airborne from an object and transposed onto another object would be part of that spatter. There's an indefinite amount of ways it could transfer.
You discussed blood splatter that would be high.
Fuck off.
caused by fire. Would the manner in which blood would splatter be affected by the size or the caliber of the weapon?
I suppose
can't.
that would be a definite.
Like, I can't even
factor in,
focus on what the fuck they're
any
talking
blood
about.
spatter results, yes.
In your experience, have you been on scenes or multiple scenes in which blood splatter was prevalent.
Yes.
In your experience,
Like, I literally could
Does
not
blood splatter
focus on whatever
follow the
question
path
she's
of the bullet?
asking me because I could not concentrate on the question
It's usually where it's
because
most
she's
pronounced
saying
at,
shit
yes.
wrong.
And so
Look,
is
he's
there-
saying pronounced.
or is there
You're
a
pronouncing it
possibility that
wrong.
blood comes out of a wound in the opposite direction that the bullet is traveling?
Yes, it is a possibility.
Is that generally less so than what follows the path of the bullet?
I believe typically, yes, it would be less. Of course, there's lots of factors that would play into that. But from my experience, yes.
Was there
They don't even know what they're
anything
talking about.
specific or anything in particular that you noticed regarding splatter
Blood splatter.
around the entrance
Splatter
wounds and
patterns.
injuries on Jan, Sabrina, or Melissa Jackson?
I don't recall seeing any type of spatter marks near the entrance on Sabrina. On Jan, it was hard to tell because like the surface that a bullet might be entering can highly impact what type of spatter you might have. What would be referred to as almost like a flowback or and so, you know, being on the head, you have a layer of hair there that could act as almost like an insulator to any blood. And being that he had darker hair, that was harder to see. And then the wounds on the front, he was obviously face down and bleeding from. So didn't notice anything on that. And I don't recall anything on Melissa either.
In the movies, there's always some gunshot and the person shooting the gun getting hit with this mist or this gust of blood blowing back from the shot. Is that realistic in your opinion?
Turn on your microphone.
The objection's over, excuse me, the objection's overruled. The witness can answer.
It seems that Hollywood would do it up way more extensive than what actually happens from being on different scenes. I haven't seen it to the Hollywood extent at all.
But you would have some
During
blowback.
Your processing of this scene, would it be fair to say that there were several firearms found in this house?
Yes.
Can you tell us the particular areas in which firearms were located?
Yes, we found some additional firearms up in the master bedroom, underneath the bed. I believe there was one on top of a bedside storage area, one in the corner of the bedroom, and then we had located a safe in the basement that also contained numerous firearms.
And when you say numerous, if you were to levy a guess as to how many additional guns were found in this home, could you do that?
I know we documented them all. It's in our documentation. Off the top of my head, I hate to guess
I'd
a
be
number, but
making a
a
guess.
handful of them.
More than 10?
Potentially, it might have been plus or minus around that number.
And you said several found in Jan's bedroom, several found in a safe, correct?
Correct.
Do you recall where
Most famous reindeer of all.
storage box for the Browning .22 caliber weapon next to you was found?
Yes, we found a Browning .22 caliber box underneath Alexander's bed.
And will you open up that binder and flip to exhibits 146, 147, and 148?
Nope. I will not.
Okay.
Do you recognize the photos?
I do.
Nope.
Are those photos taken in Alexander Jackson's bedroom during the 4-day period where evidence was being processed?
Yes.
Your Honor, at this time, the state would move to admit exhibits 146, 147, and 148.
Mr. Johnson, any objection? All right, then exhibits 146, 147, and 148 are admitted. Would you like to publish these?
Yes, Your Honor. Investigator Bosenberg, can you tell us what we're seeing in
Like
exhibit
it's
146?
the gun
We're in
case.
Alexander's room. This is a photo showing the box where we found it underneath the bed on the right side of the bed.
And what are we seeing in 147?
That's the box pulled out. Another photo of it.
And in 146, can you tell us what we're seeing?
The same box that we removed from underneath the bed.
In order for the weapon to be secured and or stored in this box, does it have to be broken down similarly to what we saw in that video?
Yes.
Did you also photograph the back porch, screened-in porch area of this home, or was that also photographed?
Yes, that was also photographed.
Will you look at States Exhibit 156, 157, and 158?
Oh my gosh.
Okay.
And are these photographs that were taken of that screened-in back porch area of this residence?
Yes.
Were these photos taken, or do the photos fairly and accurately depict the condition of that back porch when you found it?
Yes.
Would you like to publish?
Move to admit exhibits 156, 157, and 158.
Any objection, Mr. Johnson? You may. All right, then States Exhibits 156, 157, and 158 are admitted. Would you like to publish these?
Yes,
Ma'am,
an overall photograph of that back porch, kind of
I
from
can
the
hear you.
inside door leading out to the porch. The dining kitchen area.
It's a cool porch.
I can't remember the name of it, but it's not the proper address. Road.
It's a side street.
Yes. Correct, yes.
And on the left side of this screened-in area, would this be pointing towards the backyard?
Yes, towards the backyard to the east.
157, what are we seeing out here?
This is some bedding material that was located on the porch.
And in 158?
This is looking now back towards the door that leads inside the house.
So from this vantage point, right, to the backyard?
Correct.
I don't have any additional questions for this witness, Your Honor.
All right, well, that is a good time for us then to take our lunch break. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'd ask you to be back here ready to go by 1:15. And again, remind you of the admonition. Again, keep an open mind, no communication with anybody, avoid media, don't do any sort of investigation. You've heard it all before several times already, but I just keep reminding you.
So he was sleeping on the back porch. It looks to be.
Everybody. All right, I hope you all had a good lunch. We're all back. We have our attorney, we have counsel, we have Mr. Jackson, and we have Mr. Rosenberg back at the stand. And again, sir, I would just remind you that you are still under oath.
No, don't lie.
I think we had just finished right before lunch with Ms. Slaughter had finished her direct examination, and so we'll turn it over to you.
Fantastic. Now we're going to listen to the man ask really confusing questions.
Good afternoon, Mr. Rosenberg.
Hi.
You would agree that thorough police work convicts the guilty. Would you agree with that?
That'd be a true statement.
And it also protects the innocent, does it not?
Yes.
I'm sure you followed with great interest that case out of Idaho, being a former crime scene unit investigator.
To be honest, I haven't actually followed much of that at all.
Okay. But you are aware that it was DNA that solved that case, correct?
I did hear something about that, yes.
That it was a small amount of DNA on a knife sheath that was left at the scene, right?
Yes.
Other than that, there might not have been any other evidence that anybody was ever in there.
Hasn't solved the case.
Yeah, potentially, yes.
In fact, in this case, we had at least 5 police officers that went through this crime scene. Is that right? Before you got there. Let me ask you this. Are you aware how many officers went through there before you got there?
I couldn't give you an exact number, no.
If I told you that Officer Brown had been in there, would you have any reason to disagree with that?
No,
Or Officer Barber,
no,
Officer Buckles,
no,
or Kaczynski?
no.
or Sergeant Hansen
No,
or Corsa the dog?
no.
Now, with respect to Officer Brown, who went through the house along with the other officers, all on top of each other, all running through trying to secure the residence, they were all in that house, right?
Yes.
What evidence would you expect to see that they were ever there?
Well, in our case, we have body cam videos to show that we were there.
That's right. They had the body cam videos. But if they weren't wearing body cameras, how would you prove that they were ever there?
I suppose their account of what happened,
I'm talking about physical evidence.
physical
Now.
evidence.
Ha ha ha!
Probably not a whole lot, unless they left their own DNA anywhere throughout
Right.
the process.
They left
Interesting.
their own DNA there, right? You would
Yes.
agree with that. Or if they left fingerprints there, correct?
The potential would exist, yes.
I mean, a lot of them wear the latex gloves. But if they left fingerprints there, if they weren't wearing the gloves, they'd leave their fingerprints there, right?
Potentially.
Or they would leave footprints there coming from outside to inside.
Potentially.
Or they would leave hairs there, right?
Potentially.
People do shed hairs, do they not?
Yes.
And that is a crime investigating technique.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I should have said crime scene investigating technique, right? You learned that at the academy.
Hairs can be used, yes, for crime scene investigations.
And when they taught you that at the academy, they taught you how to look for hairs, right?
I'm sure it was covered, yes.
And how to collect them.
He talked you into
I
a.
don't remember, but I'm
He
sure
talked
it
you
was-
into
You didn't do
something.
any of that at the crime scene on Oakleaf Court, did you?
No.
You didn't do any attempts to collect any hairs or fibers at the scene.
No.
Why not?
Any other way we could prove that Officers Brown or Barber or Buckles or Kaczynski or Sergeant Hansen or Corsa the dog were at that scene?
I mean, aside from the previously mentioned ways, no. Not that I can think of.
Now, you did find a fingerprint on that gun. I think you called it Leighton number 3. That is an identifiable fingerprint, is it not?
Palm print, yes.
Palm print. It is identifiable, right?
We did not identify it.
As of yet, right?
The potential exists to have it identified, but it hasn't been.
And what database did you submit this Leighton print number 3?
That would have been the FBI database.
Are you sure you submitted it through the FBI database?
Upon reviewing my reports, I did not mention that it was submitted through the FBI database. I know it was submitted through the Iowa database.
Okay. And the Iowa database would be a considerably smaller database, would it not?
Yes.
And there's enough detail in this palm print that you can exclude people as being the person who had this palm print, right?
I would say, yeah, there would exist enough detail to do an exclusion.
How many points of identification could you identify on this palm print?
If I remember, it was close to the borderline for identification, but I think it was around 8 to 10, maybe.
All right, maybe 10, maybe more than 10?
Potentially, I don't know off the top of my head.
And it's so identifiable that you entered it into the database twice, right?
I don't know if I would use the word so identifiable that I entered it twice. I entered it twice because the first time didn't result in anything. So I re-entered it. Sometimes your orientation on entry might have an effect. I don't know for sure, but so I entered it twice, yes.
You entered it twice because you weren't sure which direction or maybe which hand the palm was from? Is that what you did for the algorithm?
Correct, yes. I'm not sure how orientation is affected by the algorithm, but I tried it to see if it would result in any different results from the system.
And this is a print that could belong to the intruder, correct?
It's an unidentified print, so we don't know who it belongs to.
But it could belong to the intruder, right?
Overall, you can answer the question.
Could you state that question again?
It's an unidentified print as of
That
yet,
could belong to an intruder.
so it could belong to the intruder.
Yes.
It's insinuating that an intruder existed. It's hard to say. I don't have any person I can attribute that print to at this moment in time.
So it could belong to the intruder.
Yes.
I don't know if I can say I don't know who it belongs to.
Okay, all right. And when I asked you in deposition whether you could rule out that there was an intruder in this case, you said, no, you could not, right?
I would have to review my deposition, but I probably said something like that, yes.
I said, do you have an opinion as to whether or not there was an intruder in this house? adjust my microphone. Do you have an opinion as to whether or not there was an intruder in this house, or whether or not it was Mr. Jackson who killed his family? Your answer was no. Remember that?
Yes.
And that was a deposition that we took of you back on August 10th of 2022, correct?
Yes.
And you were under oath at that time.
Yes.
So you stand by your testimony today, do you not?
That was my opinion, then yes.
Do you want me to show it to you?
No, I believe you.
Okay. All right. And I also
Nope.
asked you.
Always
had an
say
opinion
yes.
whether or not
I
Mr.
want to
Jackson's
see.
injury was self-inflicted or not. By Mr. Jackson, I'm sorry, Alexander Jackson, his injury to his foot. Do you have an opinion whether or not that was self-inflicted or as a result of a struggle? Your answer was no, right?
That is correct.
And that's the answer you gave us under oath back on August 10th of 2022.
Yes.
With respect to this latent print number 3 then, there was sufficient enough detail that you could enter it into the database, correct?
The database is on a threshold on detail that's present in print. You could enter a print with little to no detail into the system.
Okay. And it could still spit out potential hits.
Yes.
And how many potential hits did this palm print give you?
So it's always based on an algorithm, and the algorithm scores responses. And so it always kicks back like the top 5 that score the highest through its algorithm.
And then, so you got 5 names.
Yes.
All right, that were all potential matches to this print.
Based on the algorithms, reports.
And then you went through, you had enough detail from this palm print that you could exclude those 5 people as being the source of that print. Is that right?
Yes, I guess you could say exclude them. It's more like I didn't find, I wasn't able to confirm any of them.
So there's some doubt as to whether one of these 5 people might have been the contributor?
No. I guess I don't know how to answer that.
Okay, what I'm trying to determine is it sounds like there's some doubt in your mind as to whether or not you could exclude those 5 people as being the source of that print.
Yeah, I suppose you could say that they were excluded because I did review them and rule them out as contributors, so yes.
You don't seem very certain about that.
So in the case with this latent print, there wasn't a lot of detail in there. We were kind of right at that threshold. So when you enter in prints, the results from the prints scored very low.
But if you would have gotten a match, you would have been like, yep, there was enough detail there to match it.
So usually when you match up a print, the algorithm score is
So
significantly higher
don't
than
do that.
it's resulted in.
So how many of these people that showed up on your search were potentially the contributor of this print?
So like I said, I believe that it kicked out the top 5 algorithm results.
And how many of those were potentially the contributor of this print?
According to the algorithm, they had the 5 highest algorithmic scores through the system.
And who were they?
Contributors of this print in your mind?
Technically, yes, we go through the list to confirm if one of them was the contributor of the print.
So one of those people that are walking around in the state of Iowa could be the contributor of this print that you found on this gun in the Jackson home.
I don't know if I would say that. Like I said, the algorithmic score was extremely low. And I had reviewed them and wasn't able to, in essence, verified that algorithmic score was low, and that I couldn't find that latent print within those top 5 results.
So you couldn't exclude those 5 people as being the contributor of that print because you didn't have enough information. Is that what you're saying?
Because of the low quality of the latent print, I don't know if I would exhaustively say exclude, because there was very little detail, even though there was enough minutia points to potentially make an ID. It was one of a more difficult print to examine and find just based on the details of the print.
So how many of these people that came up of the top 5 were you not able to exclude as the possible source of this print?
Again, I went through all 5 of them and I didn't confirm that were the contributors. So I, in essence, excluded them from the list.
Because you couldn't confirm, you couldn't make a match. Not because you couldn't tell that it wasn't them, you just couldn't tell that it was them. Do you see the difference?
I do.
Okay. So I'm just trying to figure out what your testimony is here. Sounds to me like what you're saying is you couldn't match them to it because you didn't have enough information. Is that right? As opposed to testifying that you couldn't exclude them because you had enough information that they did match.
Yes.
Yes, I guess kind of semantics on how you view it, not able to confirm or excluding.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have
That I
late
think
print, right? Late
Yes.
you
number
can't
3.
confirm,
Do you
but you
have a
can't
photograph of that
deny
with you?
that those 5 might
it
be.
Can you get it out for us?
Sure.
Thank you.
Oh God. Wasn't it sitting out because they were gonna go hunting the next day or go shooting? So it might have already been loaded.
Okay.
I don't know. Maybe that was a different case I was watching.
Go for it.
Go for it. Yeah.
So that is a photograph of the print, the palm print that you found on the firearm, state exhibit number 14, that I marked as defendant's exhibit 2. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
And you could have done the same sort of overlay on your firearm with this particular print too, in terms of what you found.
Oh, yes.
Your Honor, I move for admission of defendant's exhibit G.
Any objection? All right, defendant's exhibit G is admitted.
And I think you already testified that there was enough rich detail there that you thought you had about 10 points of identification.
Roughly maybe 8 to 10 plus or minus.
So if you had done the same analysis on this print that you did on the other 2, you would know that, right? With the little blue lines. Remember? When you did that on the other 2 prints?
Yes.
You could have done that with this one too.
Yes, I did that while I was matched that up to the known print.
Because you had a known print to match it up to, that's what you're doing.
Yes.
But you could also, at least as far as this print goes, you can identify a number of places on that print in order to make a comparison to another. Right?
I guess, yeah, the same technique could have been done to show the data points, as we might want to say, on a print like this.
And you submit that print into the database, right?
Yes.
Now, when you submit a print into the database, does it constantly check for you, or do you have to resubmit it every time you want the computer to take another crack at it?
It can work both ways.
When you submit it into the Iowa database, does it constantly keep checking against Iowa offenders or people with fingerprints in Iowa, or do you have to resubmit it?
It could be done both ways. There's an option to select which way you want it to be searched in the database.
And which way did you do it in this case?
This one, I believe, is still open for searching in the database.
But you're not sure of that.
I no longer work there, so I don't have the ability to check that.
Understood. When did you stop working for the state of Iowa?
October of 2022.
And when did you start working in the crime scene unit?
January of 2020.
2020.
And again, you're not sure that you submitted this to the federal database at all, are you?
I'm fairly confident, but I don't have that notated in my reports to officially confirm that.
You offered a number of reports in this case, right?
Yes.
And you detailed what you did in those cases.
Yes.
On those occasions, right?
Yes.
And there's nowhere in your report that you submitted late number 3 to the federal database, is there?
That's correct.
You looked at that before you came here to testify today.
Yes.
So it was obviously something that was on your mind.
Yes, all my reports, the whole case, were.
So that is at least some evidence that someone else was in that house, isn't it?
I couldn't say that at all, actually.
All right. Now, we talked a little bit about DNA evidence, and you would agree that that's important, would you not?
Correct.
And I mean, that's lab evidence, right? It's scientific,
Oh, yes.
and it helps you solve crimes, doesn't it?
Yes.
And so that's why you swab items for DNA.
Yes.
There's a lot of different kinds of sources for DNA, aren't there?
Yes.
You can get DNA from blood, right?
Yes.
You can get it from saliva.
Yes.
You can get it from sweat.
Yes, I believe so.
You can even touch items and leave DNA, right?
Yes.
We talked about that in the last case that you and I had together. You remember that?
Yes.
And every time you touch something, you might leave some DNA on it, right?
Yes.
And even though it's a small quantity of DNA, it might be detectable, right?
Yes, potentially detectable.
Right. You might develop a profile
Potentially.
that you can compare to other people.
Potentially, yes.
Now, you testified that there were 3 rounds that were found inside this firearm. Is that right?
Correct.
And it sounds like it's the state's position that this firearm had to be reloaded at some point, correct?
Yes.
Because there were 13 shell casings, I think 13 or 14 shell casings, and there was 3 rounds in the gun, right?
Yes.
And your testimony was it only holds, did you say 11 or 12?
11.
Okay. And that's because you looked that up on the Browning website.
Correct.
All right. Now, so the 3 bullets in that gun that you found, completely protected by the gun itself, right?
Yes.
They're inside that gun, right?
Yes.
They had to have been loaded by the shooter, right?
Yes.
If the state's theory is correct, that this
Why
firearm had to be
didn't you
reloaded,
test
right?
those for fingerprints?
Yes.
So those 3 bullets inside that gun are incredibly important, are they not?
Yes.
Because you're not going to get DNA off a bullet that's already traveled through somebody else's body. You're just going to get that person's DNA, right?
Yes.
You're not going to get DNA off a shell casing probably that has been fired and ejected.
I don't know about that. I think there's studies out there, so I couldn't say one way or
Okay,
another with
all right.
fired casings.
But in the act of firing a bullet, that creates a significant amount of heat inside that chamber, right?
Yes, I think there would be a high potential for something to be disturbed in that process.
You wouldn't want to catch a shell casing coming out of that just came out of a gun, right?
It burns a little bit.
Burns a little bit. Sounds like that might have happened to you.
Frequently at the police range, yes.
Okay. All right. So probably not going to get a DNA sample off of that, right?
I suppose the probability is a little bit again. I can't necessarily state one way or another.
So it might be worth testing even shell casings for DNA.
Potentially, yes. I think the technology exists, but I don't know how far advanced we've become in testing fired casings yet.
Going back to the 3 bullets that had not been fired, that remained inside this gun, did you swab those for DNA?
I did not.
It sounds like you swabbed a lot of this gun for DNA. Is that right?
That is correct.
Not just the items that were submitted to the DCI that we've already heard about, which was the ammo box, right? And the trigger area, correct?
Yes.
And the breech block, right?
Yes.
And the loading port, correct?
Correct.
And the magazine tube, right?
Yes.
All those things that are in State's Exhibit 152, you did more swabbing than that, didn't you?
Yes.
And the subsequent swab of this firearm, you swabbed the groves on the front end of the underbarrel charging handle, right?
Yes.
You also took a swab from what is known as the barrel lock, right?
Yes.
That's that part on the top of the gun that you turn, I assume, so that you can take the gun apart.
Correct.
You swab from around the front sight.
Yes.
You swab from the barrel adjusting ring, right?
Yes. Yes.
You swab from the top and bottom of the wooden stock.
Yes.
And then you wrote 3 live rounds were discovered loaded in the rifle, right?
Yes.
The charging handle was pulled back to make visible the rounds in the chamber, correct?
Correct.
A photo was taken of the first round located in the chamber area. We saw that photo, right?
Yes.
When the charging handle breech block was pulled back, correct?
Yes.
These 3 rounds were immediately placed into an evidence paper bag for potential future processing, right?
Yes.
You even went as far as to say no handling of the 3 live rounds was done.
Yes.
That is a potential source of DNA, correct?
Yes.
And it would show who loaded those bullets if DNA could be found, right?
Yes. DNA found on that could definitely indicate that for sure.
And if the state's theory is correct that this gun had to be reloaded, that would prove who the shooter was, would it not?
That would definitely assist.
Well, you don't think so. It was a two-person job, do you?
No.
Okay. Then you took a DNA swab from the loading port edges on the right side of the stock, right?
Yes.
And then you took a DNA swab from the magazine tube end on the end of the stock, right?
Yes.
And you took a DNA swab taken from the end of the barrel,
Yes.
which would show
I could be a
how
detective.
close the firearm might have been to any of these people that got shot. If there were DNA, would end up on the muzzle, right?
I don't know that a DNA result would actually be able to show a distance.
I'm sorry, not the distance, but there's a reason why you swabbed that muzzle, right?
Yes.
Because you thought maybe you might find DNA on there.
Correct.
And what did you do with all of those swabs that are listed on that report?
They were all entered into evidence.
And when did they get sent to the DCI for testing?
So only the ones on the DCI report were sent off to test.
So the bullets never got swabbed.
No.
And the rest of those items that I read off didn't get sent to the DCI for testing. Is that right?
That is correct.
Why?
Now, do you still have that firearm nearby?
I do.
Okay. Now, you testified that, in your opinion, that's the firearm that shot these people at the Oakleaf residence, right?
Yes.
That was your opinion, and that's because you entered some shell casings in the NIBIN system, right?
Yes. 2 casings were submitted for entry into NIBIN.
And these casings were casings that were taken from the crime scene, right?
One of those casings was, yes.
Well, it looks like there's 2 Remington casings on here.
Yes. If we're referring to the NIBIN report, one of the casings was actually the test fire casing that we would have taken during our test fires. It was entered into NIBIN.
All right. Anyway, Your Honor, may I approach? You may. I want to hand you what I marked as Defendant's Exhibit A. And is that the report that you would like to read?
Yes.
That report references one of the shell casings found from the scene. Does it not describe it?
Yes, it does.
And it describes it as 22 short. Does it not?
It does on this report, yes.
All right. In fact, all of the casings on that report are described as shorts, are they not?
They are.
Now, does that 22 Browning rifle, is that capable of firing 22 shorts?
I believe it is, yes.
All right. And so, isn't it true that if they were long rifle shells, it holds 11, right?
Yes.
If they are short rifle shells, it holds more than 11, does it not?
In theory, I guess, yes.
There'd be more room for more shells, right?
Correct.
It's like a stapler, sort of, doesn't it? You pull out that tube, it's got the little springy thing on the end, and then you just keep feeding in bullets until it fills up, right?
Correct, yeah.
And then you put that tube back in. I'd like to call it like a stapler, because that's the spring that keeps the bullets moving through the semi-automatic process, right?
Yes.
All right. So how many bullets does that Browning rifle hold if it's 22 shorts instead of 22 longs?
I do not know the answer to that.
It would be more than 11, would it not?
Yes.
I would move, Your Honor, for admission of Defendant's Exhibit. I believe that's A.
You did mark it A. Any objection? All right, then Defendant's Exhibit A is admitted.
Oh, yes, right here.
Conclusion of this review is that this guy been investigated lead and developed a correlation review of the ballistic evidence by agency has not yet been confirmed by microscopic comparison.
Correct.
However, the potential that the same firearm was involved in the investigation is significant enough that an investigative follow-up is warranted at this time. Should an investigator choose to proceed?
Correct. We did not know.
You're asking Mr. Rosenberg to do that? Yeah, that's fine.
No, you're fine.
Mr. Johnson,
Of a chance, do you, Monica? It'll work.
You may.
Yes, if we're on the right side of the weapon, the rifle, so it would be more back right around this section right here. Kind of like right in between where the goes in, the crease of the buttstock right here.
Okay, so you're indicating, just for the record, to the front end of the back end of the firearm, but the front end of where you load the bullets.
Correct.
What's that called? Or buttstock?
The buttstock, yes, that would be one phrase.
And that's right here. This hole right here is where the bullets go. Is that right?
Yes.
After you remove that thing out of that.
Yes.
Now, when you demonstrated for the ladies and gentlemen of the jury with your hands where you found Mr. Jackson's prints on that gun, you're not saying that those prints were left there at the same time.
No.
But they could have.
Potentially, yes.
And if they would, nobody would shoot a rifle like that. They wouldn't shoot like with their hands on either side of the back here.
You could, if you wanted to.
How many times have you shot a rifle?
That would be different than your typical way to hold in a traditional style. Yes.
How many times have you shot a rifle?
I don't know if I ever have, to be honest.
Well, you wouldn't, would you?
Not typically, no.
You wouldn't be able to get any hits.
That would be efficient.
If you're trying to shoot yourself in the foot, you certainly wouldn't hold it like that.
It's the same.
In other words, no print of Mr. Jackson was found on this part of the firearm. I'm you right. The front, right here, on the front of the, what do you call this part?
The fore-end grip is how I refer to it as.
The forend, you didn't find any prints there.
Correct.
Thank you. I'm done with it. Now, for one reason, you might bring a gun like that.
I'm sorry. You need to be here for this. All right.
It'll be Elba.
That is if you're pulling. Would you agree with that? If you pull with another time, will be an action like this. You hear that?
Yes.
Somebody who was engaged in a kind of tug of war with that weapon.
That'd be correct. Accurate statement, yes.
Fighting over a gun with an intruder.
In the, I guess, the 2.5 years that you were a crime scene investigator, how many homicide crime scenes did you work in that period of time?
Just the one.
I'd say over 15.
Okay. How many of those were firearms cases?
A majority of them, I would say.
And how many times have you witnessed somebody being shot?
Physically seen the act take place?
Yes.
Like live, you're asking? No.
Live.
Because you gave an opinion about blowback and how much blood comes back when somebody gets shot. But you haven't actually seen that happen, have you?
Yes, I believe my opinion was that it just is a possibility, but yes, I've never seen that happen.
So again, speculation.
When you went to the hospital,
His
you confirmed that on
objection,
June
which
15th,
was
right?
his objection, was
You were there,
speculation.
I think you got there ahead of Mr. Jackson. Is that right?
Yes.
And you were there to take photographs
Yes.
and to swab Mr. Jackson, right?
Yes.
For potential evidence that might have been on Mr. Jackson,
Correct.
to see if there was any DNA on him.
Yes.
And you did those things, right?
Yes.
You took the pictures, right?
Yes.
And you swabbed his hands for DNA.
Yes.
Right? Swabbed his leg,
Yes.
swabbed other parts of his body.
Yes.
And when did those swabs get submitted to the DCI lab for testing?
They did not.
Sorry, what?
I'm sorry. They did not get submitted.
I'm sorry, what?
Well, you took pictures of all those swabs, right?
Oh, Jesus.
Made sure to mark them. Blood swab, AJ1, right?
Yes.
AJ2,
Yes.
that was another part. And you had this whole report done of all the places that you swabbed Mr. Jackson. Is that right?
Correct.
You want to approach the witness?
You may.
Okay.
Would those pictures fairly and accurately represent the areas that you swabbed on Mr. Jackson?
Yes.
Your Honor, I'd move for admission of Defendant's Exhibit C.
Any objection? All right, then, without objection, Defendant's Exhibit C is admitted.
And you didn't submit any of those swabs to the DCI for testing,
Correct. None were submitted.
even though there's clearly blood in all of those areas.
Yes.
And blood in one of those areas
What if it's
might
his
indicate that
blood?
it came from one of the victims of this offense, would it not?
It's possible. Yes.
Or the blood might indicate that it came from the intruder that Mr. Jackson was struggling with.
If that blood existed, potentially.
But you didn't submit it.
No.
That's a triple homicide case, right?
Yes.
Very important case.
Yes.
And at the start, you agreed with me that thorough police work convicts the guilty, and it also protects the innocent, does it not?
Yes.
Did you not want to know what was on those swabs?
That's not necessarily a decision that I always get to make solely by myself on what items get sent to the state lab.
Did somebody tell you not to submit those?
Bullshit.
No, these investigations, I'm not the only one investigating these. I'm just one cog in a whole investigation. So I do the
Okay.
front end work, and then investigation as a whole, including the commanders and lead investigators, will put all the information together and kind of make a decision on what they would like to send into the lab.
But why wouldn't you send in something like that?
I don't know.
Now, you
Because they didn't
testified
think
that
it was necessary
Jackson didn't
because
have any defensive wounds.
he was the one that did it.
Question from Ms. Slaughter.
Yes.
You were taking these pictures while he was in his hospital room, right?
Correct.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness?
You may.
Y'all railroaded this dude. Even if he did do it, this shit was sloppy as fuck, police work wise. Like, just like OJ. Y'all get too confident
Yes.
in the fact that y'all think that you got this shit,
That's a picture of
and then you
in the
get
hospital.
too fucking
Fairly
confident.
and accurately depict the way he looked that day when you saw him?
Yes.
Move for admission of Defendant's Exhibit B, Your Honor.
Any objection, Ms. Slaughter? Then Defendant's Exhibit B is admitted.
When you saw Alexander Jackson, he was bleeding from the foot, right?
Yes.
Actively bleeding.
Yes.
And he was on a gurney, right?
Hospital bed. Yes.
Okay, sure. And he had a hospital gown on,
Yes.
and he had, looks like underwear on in that picture,
Yes.
right? And when you say that Mr. Jackson didn't have any defensive wounds, you didn't clean him up, did you?
No.
You wouldn't have done that in an emergency room.
No.
And so you didn't clean the blood off him to see if he had any injuries on his hands.
No, he did not.
Correct. Yeah. The blood was there the whole time I was there.
Or on his legs.
Correct.
You didn't take his gown off of him, right?
No.
You didn't flip him over on his back to see if he had any injuries to his back.
No.
But he did have one very obvious injury to his foot.
Correct.
Could have been a defensive wound.
Did you notice any stippling or soot deposits on Mr. Jackson's foot?
They didn't even test that, did they?
I guess I don't know how to answer that. I saw the injury. The injury was discolored from the injury, but how to classify that, I guess I don't know.
Just asking if you saw it or you didn't see it.
No, nothing. obvious like that.
Did you check under his fingernails? Did you do any scrapings of those to see if anybody's DNA was under there?
Other than swabs of the hands, no, I didn't do any fingernail scrapings.
But that is another investigative technique, correct?
It is, yes, a technique, yes.
Well, it's done pretty frequently, isn't it?
More so on the deceased.
But you can scrape the nails
Oh,
of a
for
living.
Oh, absolutely.
Fuck's sake. Yes, you
All you
can.
gotta do is you just got to ask
What
first,
the
right?
hell?
Yes,
All right. And his feet were bare, were they not?
they were.
That's the way he came into the emergency room.
Yes.
Did you notice whether he had been scalded or burned on his feet by any hot shell casings that might have come out of that gun?
I didn't observe any marks like that.
And you did say that the gun ejects the shell casings straight down.
Yeah, straight down and slightly forward is what we found it to eject.
You wouldn't want to shoot that gun barefooted, would you?
I mean, it might burn, but it's, from my experience with hot shell casings, they sting a little bit, but they don't. Other than that, it's not terrible.
Might leave a mark, though,
Can't actually say if they would or not.
because you haven't been dumb enough to shoot a gun like that barefooted.
If I refer to all the times at the range when I've had hot brass go down the back of my shirt, I don't ever remember seeing markings, but it wasn't the first thing I was looking for either. So
Kind of hurts, doesn't it? Those are some big feet, too, aren't they?
Some big feet, too.
I guess
That's okay.
I don't know how to answer that.
All right, that's fine.
It's a weird question.
Now, kind of as an investigator, you got to make a decision, don't you, when you get something like that firearm? You got to make a decision where to swab and where to look for fingerprints, right?
Yes.
And that's because when you swab for DNA, you can destroy fingerprints.
Yes.
And there's the potential when you superglue fume something, you might destroy DNA.
I think the potential exists for that to happen.
Because you swab the gun first, right, for DNA.
Yes.
And then you check for prints after that.
Correct.
So any places that you swab might have disturbed fingerprints.
Yes.
Nothing wrong with that. That's just a choice you have to make, right?
Correct.
An investigative choice you have to make. But not everything that somebody touches leaves detectable DNA, does it?
Correct.
And not everything that somebody touches leaves fingerprints either.
Correct.
And when you dusted the door, the back door, you found ridge detail, did you not? It was just insufficient? Or did you not find any?
I'd have to review my report. We didn't find anything that was substantial that turned in anything. I don't remember if we found any signs of ridge detail that would have been insignificant or not, but I know the end result was nothing suitable came from that process.
Okay. And you did not find any of the victims' DNA on Alexander Jackson throughout this entire investigation, did you?
It's the only items we'd sent in from him were some clothing items, and only his DNA came back on those.
I'm sorry? You didn't find any victims' DNA anywhere on Alexander Jackson, did you?
On the samples that we tested, no.
Not on his clothes?
Not on him.
Correct. On the areas the lab tested, they did not find that, no.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness?
You may.
Yes.
And what are those?
These are photographs of the shirt that Alexander had been wearing.
Your Honor, move for admission of defendant's exhibits D and E.
D and E.
Yes, D and E as in Edward. Yep.
Any objection?
Dog
All
and Edward.
Defendants exhibits D and E are admitted.
That's the shirt that Mr. Jackson was wearing on the day, right?
Correct.
You didn't find any victim DNA on that shirt anywhere, did you?
Yeah, according to the DCI report, no.
Because that was submitted to the DCI,
Yes.
right? And according to the DCI report, you didn't find Mr. Jackson's DNA on the ammo box either, did you?
There was no, no DNA was discovered in the samples we sent or insufficient data. DNA was located.
So you didn't find it on the trigger area of the rifle either,
Correct.
or the breech block,
Yes.
or the loading port,
Correct.
or the magazine tube.
Correct.
Not on his gray cargo shorts, right?
I would have to double check the report. I remember DNA coming back in the clothing, but
Well, if I told you it was gray cargo shorts, would you trust me on that?
yes.
And nothing came back on that, right?
Yeah, that's what the report shows.
And or the red polo or his red polo shirt, right?
Other than his DNA, you're saying? Yes.
Other than his DNA.
Correct.
That's right.
Oh,
Sorry.
yes. Yeah, no,
Other than Alex's DNA.
correct.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness again?
You may.
I liked the argument of how would you know that the police were in the house? That was a good question.
Yes, this is a picture of the basement living room over by the fireplace, looking come back towards the entry door.
And does that show a number of rounds of ammunition on the fireplace?
Yes.
And they're all sort of spread out on there.
Yes.
And does
And
that also show
it
the
goes
paper
for
towels
DNA
that
either.
may not have been used to clean this firearm?
Yes.
All right. And you were asked a question by Ms. Slaughter about whether you could tell if anything had been moved down there in the basement. You remember that question?
How can you tell
Yes.
if anything?
I mean, obviously those
Oh,
bullets have been
furniture.
moved. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
All right.
Oh,
And you
excuse me.
I also asked you this question in deposition,
Dr.
whether
Pepper
any
makes
items had been moved
me
at the crime scene, and you told me that it's not always easy to tell when things have been moved. Remember when you told me that?
Yes.
And with respect to the furniture in this case, Ms. Slaughter asked you about impressions in the carpet, whether or not you could check to see if the furniture had been moved because they always leave those little, nodules in the carpet where they were.
Yes.
You didn't check that, did you?
No, the furniture appeared to be in a normal position.
So
You
didn't
don't
check to
know.
see whether they had been shifted slightly forward.
You
or
didn't
anything.
look.
Yes, we did. Eventually they were tipped over, but I don't remember checking the exact location of the carpet mark, so we did that.
And you don't know what the original position of the furniture was before you got in there.
No, he
Technically
doesn't.
speaking, no.
Can we
What do you know?
have to ask
Sir?
the state to do this?
I don't think he knows a whole lot of nothing.
Put up,
That's why he's not an investigator no more. Like, sir, you don't really know what
72,
you're doing.
Exhibit 72, please. I'm only asking because she already said she would do it. It's very kind of you.
Reboot the system real quick, which means the mics are off.
Oh no. Oh, they're not. Gotta reboot the system. We're just sitting in the dark.
It's there, but it's not on these two monitors anymore. All right.
It's a fast reboot.
Voila. All right, Mr. Johnson.
Thank you. Can you see that all right, Mr. Bosenberg?
Yes.
Okay. And do you see in the foreground of State's Exhibit 72 that bloody patch right there on the carpeting? Number 12 is?
Yes.
And is number 12 a shell casing? Or maybe number 13?
I believe number 13 was a shell casing, number 12 was a live round.
Okay, thank you. And looking at that picture, would you say that that is consistent with somebody who got shot there and then went down that hallway down into Mr. Jackson's room? You see the bloody footprints that go in that direction?
Yes.
So that would be consistent with somebody who got shot there and went down to Mr. Jackson's bedroom.
So did he
I
get?
suppose that would be one explanation of it.
Well, let me ask you a different question. Have you seen the videos from the police officers before you got to the scene?
I watched one clip initially during this investigation, but I didn't watch all of the clips, no.
So maybe you can recall that Mr. Jackson, when they first came in, was found down by his room. Would that be fair to say?
Yes,
And there was only one bloody trail at that time, if you can recall, going down to the hallway. You remember that?
I don't.
Do you remember Mr. Jackson making
What
his way
did
back
you
and forth
do?
to the lobby?
Like, what did this guy do?
From the clip I watched, I remember seeing Mr. Jackson in the hallway.
Like, I don't
Towards the
even
end
know
of the
what this
hallway.
dude did. Like, what kind of investigator
So
did you?
it's
What
at
kind of
least consistent with somebody getting
investigation
shot
did you
there
do?
and then moving down the hallway. One possible explanation for that bloody trail, right?
Yes,
Okay.
You got a lot of I don't knows, and I didn't see that, and I didn't watch that, and I didn't send that in. We didn't do that.
Thank you. I think that's all I had for that picture.
Jesus, fuck.
And then you've already testified that in Mr. Jackson's bedroom, you found a broken belt buckle and a broken belt, right?
yes,
And that would be consistent with somebody who tried to apply a tourniquet to their foot, right?
yes,
And there was also some other blood in that
I mean,
room
it goes along
that
with his
could have been
story.
left there as a result of that process, right?
yes,
Some blood that Mr. Slaughter pointed out on the bed and at the bottom of the bed.
yes,
Because putting on a tourniquet would probably cause some blood to spurt, would it not?
yes.
And there were no shell casings found in Mr. Jackson's bedroom, were there?
Yeesh.
No.
I want to ask you a few questions about these cameras. You know what I'm talking about?
Yes,
Okay. So there were cameras at the Jackson house,
yes,
the Ring cameras, right?
yes,
And the cameras were on, right?
I don't know if they were or not.
Okay. Well, there you were able to obtain video
Dear
from
God.
the front door camera, right?
I'm not aware of that portion of the investigation. I didn't do that portion of that.
Okay. You didn't have anything to do with viewing any of the cameras?
No, I didn't review any of that camera footage.
You didn't have anything to do with the process, the Ring camera from the back?
Correct.
All right. Let's stick with that then. So
Fuck. What did you do?
take the Ring camera from the backyard
Yes, from the back porch on the upper level.
on the upper level on the railing.
Yes,
And that camera had a battery in it, right?
yes,
It was a wireless camera.
correct.
And you tested the battery, right?
Yes,
The battery had a charge in it.
yes,
And you even went so far as to have an officer walk in front of that camera to test when the motion detectors would come on, right?
correct.
And what was the result of your test?
The results I believe we got back is that it wasn't recording during that section. I don't remember hearing any results back from our experiment we did because we didn't know if the camera was on or not on at that point.
The reason I ask is because there isn't anything in your reports that said you ever got any information back.
Yes,
So you don't know what the result of that experiment was.
correct. Yes, we weren't the ones following up with the video.
But you are at least aware that the cameras in the front and the camera in the garage show the police activity that day.
I wouldn't even be able to answer that question. I really didn't get many updates on the video process.
Well, isn't the reason you did that experiment with the back camera is because there was some issue with that back camera's motion detector?
No, the reason we'd done that was to see what the camera might be able to pick up at different areas of the backyard because cameras have different settings and
Stop breathing into your mic
how much motion
like
it picks up.
that.
So we ran a few tests in case the camera was on.
Mr. Johnson.
At that time, if it was or not.
And you don't know what the results of that were?
No,
All right, so you're not aware of whether or not it showed Mr. Jackson the night before, just walking back up into his screened-in porch?
I don't know the answer to that. I didn't receive any information on.
And you don't know what the calibration was of when that camera would pick up motion at all?
No, I didn't follow up with that aspect of the investigation.
So, the camera shows the whole backyard, but
Jesus
it's motion
Christ.
activated, right?
I know those cameras have the potential, but I don't have any details on how these cameras operated.
You didn't find any evidence that camera had been tampered with, did you?
No, there's nothing to suggest that.
And you did not find Mr. Jackson's prints on that camera, did you?
Correct, no prints were found on that camera.
Even if he had messed
You
with the
also
camera.
obtained
Well,
Mr. Jackson's cell phone records, correct?
I did not.
you can't
personally,
erase the
that was
footage.
my area of
It's
investigation
saved on
in
the
this case.
You
cloud,
didn't get the search warrant for his cell phone records.
and he doesn't have access.
So you're not aware of what
I have
showed up on his
cameras. I
phone,
have access. My
what
kids
didn't,
don't.
No,
or what showed up on his computer or what didn't?
no.
And we did see already there was blankets on the screened-in porch, right?
Yes, we did.
And that would be consistent with somebody who had slept there.
Yes.
Did you do any research into what the temperature was that day on June 15th of 2021?
Hot.
No, nothing that I documented.
Or the high or the low of that day?
No, I did not.
Did you?
Getting back to this issue about whether anything had been moved in the house, you are aware that someone came down those stairs, Mr. Jackson, was shot and fell, right?
Yes.
And your theory is that he came down those stairs and fell forward at the bottom of them.
Yes.
Which
And yet,
stairs?
that didn't move anything in the house, did it?
Did not appear so, no.
You may.
What stairs? The downstairs stairs? Or the outside stairs? Girl, fix your hair though.
I'm sorry, by Mr. Jackson, I meant Jan Jackson coming down the stairs. Sorry if I confused you. And Your Honor, at this time, we'd offer Defendant's Exhibit F.
Any objection?
Yeah, I was confused too.
Oh, yes.
All right. Then Defendant's Exhibit F is admitted.
What is it? What is it? Would you like to publish
Throughout
so we can
that
all
entire
see it?
house, there are photographs of that family, right?
Yes.
And you noticed that when you went through it.
Yes.
Photos of the Jackson family all throughout the years,
Yes.
right?
Well, you
Photos
know
of
what? The Jackson
Alex and
5
Sabrina
put
with
on a good
parents
show that
on
they were
vacations.
happy to, and they
Yes,
weren't.
photos of them, posed photos, you know, like the old Olin Mills photos. You probably don't remember that. But a lot of photos of the family, right?
Yes.
A lot of photos of the kids.
Yes.
I have lots of photos too. We're a
I noticed in
wonderfully,
one of your reports,
wonderfully happy family.
there's a receipt, I think, from
Don't let my
came
kids
back from
tell
the
you
medical examiner's
otherwise.
office. And do you recall getting back the all of the evidence from those autopsies?
Yes.
There was on Sabrina Jackson's autopsy evidence under personal effects, it says earplug.
Yes.
Was she wearing earplugs that night?
One was
I don't
found in
know.
the autopsy. I don't remember observing that while we were on scene at the time, but it was discovered, yes, during the autopsy.
Was that an earplug or an earbud?
It looked like a noise canceling earplug.
Okay. Well, people wouldn't just wear one of those, would they?
Not usually. Really? Sustained? You don't. Well, my neighbor did just wear one thing in his ear because he had an ear thing. So he always had something in the one ear. But normally, when you wear earplugs at night, you wear them in
With
both
respect to
ears.
the
But I don't know
loudness of
how
this
people do
firearm,
that.
Do
I
you
don't
have
like
equipment at the
quiet.
Cedar Rapids Police Department to test how loud a particular
I
firearm
need
might be?
We inquired about that, but I did not believe that we had the
But not like
equipment to
noise.
test
I
something
need
like
like
that.
fan
So you
noise.
didn't have a decibel meter?
No, we had at one point, but I don't even know if that would give you a value reading on a gunshot. I believe the decimal meter we used to have, and I don't even know if it was.
We got about 10 more
historical,
minutes with
it was
this
more of a
guy,
sustained noise.
and we are going to call
So there
this
weren't any
one a
experiments
wrap.
conducted by you or any other members of the Cedar Rapids Police Department, to your knowledge, in the home about whether or not that firearm could be heard throughout the house?
That's correct. Yes, I did do any of those experiments.
In other words, nobody fired it in the basement and tried to figure out how loud it would have been on the porch?
Correct.
Correct.
When you went through the house, did you notice an alarm system there?
No, probably not. But I did. They have one.
There was a sensor up in the main living room, but I don't know if that was part of an alarm system. I don't recall seeing any other type of system.
You didn't see anything like an alarm system that had been ripped from the wall?
No.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness?
You may.
I want to hand you what I've marked as.
Yes.
There was an alarm pad thingy on the wall, the front door.
Hand you what I've marked as Defendant's Exhibit H. Ask you if you can identify that.
Yes, this is a picture taken of the backyard.
Is that an accurate representation of what the backyard looks like?
Yes.
Move for admission of Defendant's Exhibit H, Your Honor.
Any objection? Sure. You want to turn on your microphone, please? Yeah, you're fine.
Investigator Bosenberg, looking at the exhibit Mr. Johnston just handed to you, are you able to tell from which vantage point that photograph is taken?
Yes, I believe just from reviewing the photos previously, this was taken from the master bedroom balcony, kind of near where the camera on that balcony would have been located.
No additional questions and no objection, Your Honor.
All right, then at this time, Defendant's Exhibit H is admitted.
Did you conduct a search of the outside of the house, the backyard?
I did look around in the backyard at certain portions of my time there, yes.
Right, and how much time did you devote to searching the backyard?
That'd be hard to say. Majority of the time was spent inside of the residence. Definitely a small portion of the time was spent actually outside of the residence.
And I don't know if you remember me asking this in the deposition, but I gave you that example of how they search in the military where they get in the line and they just go straight down. That you guys didn't do that, right?
No, I was not a part of any like formalized line searching in the yard, no.
Do you know what I'm talking about, where everybody gets in the line and they go down and they pick up whatever's in front of them?
Yes,
All right. But you did just sort of a cursory check of the backyard.
yes,
You wouldn't call it a thorough search, would you?
no.
No. I didn't thoroughly search the backyard. I just did a glance over. Just a look skis. Just a little looky-loo.
Just give me a second.
And it was hot, so I went inside. Ow. God. It's time for a break, skis. Ow.
Did you have occasion to conduct a search for the bullet that would have gone through Alexander Jackson's foot?
Yes, Queen.
I didn't
Yes.
quite hear one of the words you said at the beginning of that question.
Sorry, I'm trying to do this microphone thing.
The bullet.
Did you conduct a search for the bullet that might have gone through Alexander Jackson's foot?
Yes,
Did you find that bullet?
no.
Why not?
Did you pull up the carpeting in that house?
We did in sections, yes.
Okay.
Well, they've pulled it up now. Because they've replaced that shit. Oh my god, my head. Oh my god. Like, this is microwave minutes. Come on.
In one of your reports, you mentioned finding some gaming systems. Is that right?
Yes,
You found a Sony PS3, right?
yes,
Oh.
And a PS4,
yes,
and an Xbox 360,
yes,
and an Xbox One.
yes.
You also found a brown plastic toolbox containing gun cleaning patched and a break-free gun cleaning canister, right?
Yes.
And that's a gun cleaning kit, right?
Yes.
Had the kinds of things in it that you were talking about with Ms. Slaughter.
Yes.
Had like a solvent in it, right?
Yes.
And some other cleaning materials.
Yes.
Found it where? Just found it. But you found a lot of things in the house. It's a big house, got a lot of stuff in it. You are just killing me, Smalls. No, let's see it. They're gonna take a break and we're gonna
Redirect.
okay, well they're gonna redirect, but we are not right now. Okay, well we are gonna end this little fun little shindig. So they didn't find the bullet that went in through his foot. They cannot rule out that there was an intruder. They can't rule out that he was fighting for the gun. They can't. I don't know what the hell this investigator did. I don't really know what the hell his purpose was. Just to put doubt, to bring in the reasonable doubt. I think that's what it was. I don't think he did not solidify anything for the state. Not one little bit. Not one single little bit, skis. I did not feel more confident at all. After his little testimony. Nope. They didn't send any swabs back from Alex. They could have proven that Alex had some DNA on him from his mom or dad or sister. Didn't do that. Oh my God. They didn't do that. They didn't swab the cartridges, the bullets. It didn't do that. Like, what did they do? Like, what did they do besides say, oh, he's the only survivor? He's it. That's it. He did it. Even if that's not the case, even if he did do it, I would not be surprised. I have enough, like, I have reasonable doubt. Like, it could have happened the way it could have happened, but he could have very well done it too. But I'm also not seeing enough evidence that says he for sure did it. Like, the state is not proving to me beyond a reasonable doubt. And that's what people forget, like, it's beyond a reasonable doubt, but juries don't really go by that. People don't really go by that. They're like, more likely than not, he did it. And that's not the standard. It's beyond a reasonable doubt. But really, they just go more likely than not, he did it. That's not the standard. But, here we are. But, anywho, we are going to call it a quit on this one. And all we have left on the day 3 is redirect on this guy And then hopefully he's just fucking done, because I am not seeing anything more. And then we have an officer, Tim Brown, body cam. Or no? No, we have an investigator, Matthew something or other. And then body cam footage. We have some interrogation. It's him in the hospital, though. So that should be fun. Right after the incident. And then it's on to day 4. Day 4. Okay. So that is all I have for you. I hope you enjoyed it. Like, comment, and subscribe, and hit the notifications to let you know when I have put out any videos, and you can keep up. And I will finish out the rest of this trial. They are on verdict watch currently for this, so they're done. I'm behind, so surprise, 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 surprise. It's fine. I'll finish it. But yeah, anyway. Okay. I see you on the next one. Deuces.